Right on. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to GoFarm's fencing workshop. My name's Britton Price. I live on the Big Island, Waiaka Hiula, Aopua'a, just outside Pohoa. I have a 20-acre homestead. I've been farming there for about 20 years, raising cows and goats for milk and meat. Also, a lot of vegetables, did an organic CSA for a number of years, and my wife and I are also some of the founding members of the Hawaiʻi Seed Growers Network. I've been part of the GoFarm team since about 2019, late 2019, started the Hilo site at Alai, and ran a few cohorts through as the full-time coach, and now I've kind of a part-time position with GoFarm where I help out the other coaches and do workshops at our different sites around the island. I'm also helping with we have a new site we're building out in Maui as well now. Anyway, there's a lot to cover today, so I want to jump right in. There's a few things that are a little different today than we would usually do. Right off the bat, you guys see these like 4x4 posts. We just got these for our site here because we're gonna pull this all out when we're done today. We're not putting up a fence to keep. For those of you who would be putting in a fence, I would recommend, if you're using wood, to use round wood fence posts. So here on Oahu, you guys have Hawaii Fence Supply. So if you're using wood, this is just like, so there, best way I could say is like take it with a grain of salt as we use these wood posts today. But we're also going to be installing a wood post fence. The other option is, does anyone know the other option? Would be metal post, right? So those are your common ways that you're going to be keeping out pigs or keeping in livestock. The fence we're going to do today is going to be for both purposes ultimately. I recommend, if you're going to go through all the effort to put in a hog-proof fence, make it good, make it 4 feet tall with your bottom strand of barbed wire and a top strand of barbed wire, so you can also fence in livestock. Maybe it's not something you want to do initially on your farm. Maybe it's like all about like, I just want to keep the pigs out, but kind of like for the effort and the labor you put into a fence, it's not going to cost you very much more or anything more to make it have the ability to keep animals in at the same time. Because if you've mowed grass as much as we've all mowed grass, eventually you might want something to eat the grass that then you can eat. It works out really well that way. Again, for today's purposes, we're going to be demoing a wood fence post installation. Okay, if you were doing metal posts, okay, you would be using Schedule 40 galvanized posts. They're very expensive. It's part of the reason I wanted to go with wood today. Also, it's drier here in Oahu for you guys, so in your drier areas, the wood will last relatively long as it's a treated wood post. Like when you're looking to purchase your wood posts from your fencing suppliers here, you really want to make sure they're treated wood fence posts, and that's what they're going to sell you. Also, like telephone poles, if you can get, or things like that will work really well. I don't recommend using like ohia. I don't know, you guys don't have much ohia actually on this island, but like we have a lot of it on Big Island, and it doesn't actually last very well. I've spoken from experience. Kiave is excellent. So if you have access to a good Kiave, Kiave makes a really good wood post. One of the things about Kiave is that you'll have to find a shorter staple. And they actually sell those, like you can find a shorter staple specifically for a hard wood like Kiave. Today we're going to be using kind of just like an average 1-inch, or I think these are like 1.25-inch staple for our purposes. When it comes to the metal post versus wood post, I'm just going to talk about that for a little bit with you guys. The metal posts will last kind of indefinitely, a long time, but they're extremely expensive. So I think on the Big Island now, like 2 7/8 is a common size that we use for our corner posts, as well as even like our line posts. And those are running for a 7-foot piece, which is a common size for a post you're going to put in the ground, about 24 to 30 inches in the ground with about 5 feet above, or a little less than 5 feet. They're, I think, about $85 a post right now. Okay, you can also buy them in 21-foot lengths and cut them yourself. I think it saves you like 10 bucks over the course of that, of cutting them yourself, but then you got to cut them yourself. But that galvanized Schedule 40 2 7/8 inch post is going to last you forever, you know, ultimately. Currently at my home place, my homestead, all my wooden posts, I have 20 acres of fence with about 10 paddocks in there, so miles of fence. We installed all wooden posts, treated wooden posts. They've lasted about depending upon different posts I've gotten over the years have been treated differently. For a long time, they were bringing in like creosote treated posts. Those lasted the longest. But over time, we've been replacing our wood posts with with metal on our home farm. But we also get about 200 inches of rain a year, so our posts don't last as long. In drier areas, your wood posts, they'll last pretty long. And also the wood post installation, you can go a little faster because you're not going to be pouring concrete. I don't recommend pouring concrete with wood because it'll rot at the base. You'll see when we demo today, we'll just use the old-fashioned O-bar and we'll just tamp them. So with the metal posts, you do need to pour cement. That's how you do it. You want to pour cement, you got to let it set up. And also with the metal posts, obviously you're not going to be using any staples. And so you got to wrap all your fencing, which is a little more time consuming and labor intensive than putting staples in. So I just wanted to kind of share those. What we're doing today is wood-based. There is another option. If some of you are in wet areas, I would recommend spending the extra money and going with a metal post installation. Everything we do will pretty much be the same. If you choose to do a metal post installation, the differences will be when you're putting your fence on, instead of putting staples, you'll be wrapping the fence. There's just a few different techniques, which once you get to that point, you cross that bridge when you come to it. So before we, jump into the actual physically demo, we're actually going to put up a section of fence today. I just wanted to review some of these tools with you. Basic tools. The other disclaimer I'll make is I've been fencing for a while. I've learned from old, Paniolos and ranchers, from Waimea to, Honoka'a to Puna, and everyone does it a little different, and you kind of get your own arsenal of tools and what works for you. So I'll show you the tricks I know. Some people have other tricks. They do make like a fencing tool. You might see it at Ace Hardware. It's almost like a pair of pliers with with a little hook on it. None of my bros, we ever use that tool. So if it's a tool you like to use, some guys maybe like to use it, but on the Big Island, I don't know. Big Island guys don't use that one. We really just use it like a cat's claw. Like a framing tool. This works really well for, removing staples, and just to have if you have to remove staples, it's more like a fence removal tool, or if you make a mistake out there. Linemen's, this is like an electrical tool, but real common tool, they call it. It's actually called lineman pliers. This is probably the most go-to tool. If you have a really good pair, careful, they tend to walk off if you have a lot of helpers. I've lost a few pairs over the years. I like to have a pair of not real heavy duty wire cutters, but something small that's not heavy to carry around. So I have these for if I have to cut through a lot of fence, it gets kind of tiring to use the linemen's for that. It's nicer to use something with a little more leverage. Nice to have a small torpedo level, for when we set our posts. We'll see how we set those today. A good hammer. Actually, to have two good hammers, and you'll see why we need two good hammers today, because there's some tricks on how to stretch your barbed wire, or even stretching wire with two hammers and 4 hands. And then I like to have, these are pretty handy. They actually sell these at most fencing stores. This is a wire twister. It's for twisting your wire. I don't know the official name of it. I've heard, anyone know the official name of one of these? Okay, forgive me because I don't. But these are, when we stretch our wire, you'll see, and we cut and we wrap it. It's for wrapping the wire around itself. I didn't have one of these for years. We always just used our hands and used the linemen's. And I love these things now. They're super handy and inexpensive. So I recommend those. I'll point out today, this is just some scrap. You're all familiar with hog panels. So hog panels will come in like some different sizes. Usually they're about 16 foot long, and they have this, I think this is like 8 or 7 gauge wire. I like to have these scraps around. You'll see why today, but when we can make small tools out of them for attaching our fence clips, and we'll point that out. You can also have, it's nice to have like a 16D nail that can be used for that, and we'll demo that today. There's different ways to make our H-brace when we attach our H. In our H-brace, I did bring along a couple spikes. Spikes get expensive if you're doing a lot of H-braces, so that's another reason why, like the old Paniololos that I learned from on some bigger ranches, they would actually use old hog panels as their nails ultimately. So you could like take this and then boom, you got a way to put your H-brace in. So I'll point that out to when we get to that point. T-post pounder, very handy. In my younger years, before I really learned how to do it well, I was out there with a hand sledge and bust myself up pretty good. So these are really handy tools. Use them. The one note, and we'll point this out when we're putting a T-post in, where I've seen this can be a dangerous tool. And where it can be dangerous is when you're pounding your T-post, if you come up too high and it comes over and hits you in the head. And yeah, I've seen some guys bleed from it, and it really slows down your work day. T-post puller, this is like a really handy tool to have on your farm. If you're putting in fence, it's likely someday you're gonna probably change that, maybe take out some fence or move some fence. Also for, we have these at GoFarm commonly because we put in trellises. So the T-post puller is this mechanically advantaged tool where, you grab onto the nipple here of the T-post, and then it just levers it out. So that's a real handy tool. I like to have, again, I keep a couple ropes for stretching when it comes to stretching my fence, and again, we'll demo what these ropes are for. I was like an old climber an arborist for a long time, so my farm is full of carabiners and slings and old ropes. So they last a long time. One thing to be mindful of with rope, if you don't have chain, is there's a difference in rope as far as dynamic rope and static rope. So static rope does not stretch. Dynamic rope has stretch to it. So if you're pulling stuff, you definitely want to have static type rope, not dynamic rope. Otherwise, you're kind of just stretching your rope. And then you're like, why is my fence not stretching? I mentioned the staples. So there's different size staples. I think these are like, we can take a measurement. I want to say I was right, 1.25 inches. So these are like 1.25 inches. This is a pretty common size for most fencing that you'll want to use when you're using wood posts and stapling your fence. Again, if you're using Chiave, which is super hard, they make like a 3/4 inch one. And it's because you're not going to be able to drive it in so far to the Chiave. So those are handy to have, and they're maybe not so available like at Home Depot or stuff. Like you really want to avoid getting any of these products at Home Depot other than maybe some of your tools. Because a lot of this stuff is like today, taking with a grain of salt. Like we got this roll of fence from Home Depot for our purposes with GoFarm. I don't recommend that because it's class 1 galvanized. So there's classifications of galvanization. Anything you use for fencing, you want to be class 3 galvanized. Okay, so most of your commercial fencing suppliers, I would presume here on the island, are going to supply you with class 3, but it's a really important question to ask. Home Depot does not provide that. Even if you go to Home Depot and you see like a bag of clips, these fence clips, which is another how you clip your fence to your T-posts, they will not be class 3. So what will happen is they'll be wimpy. And after about 5 years, your clips will start to rust. And once one thing starts to rust, what happens with everything else around it? Yeah, so what'll happen is at each one of your clips, your fence will start to rust. And then you'll be back fixing that. So it's really important to have those high quality materials from the start. And so you can, sounds like you have a spot to get them over here. I did speak with who we use on the Big Island is Miranda's Country Store, and they do ship to other islands. So if you're looking for something specific, it's a place where you can get different products. Come along, something, you know, every farm should have, but that's how we're going to stretch the fence. 9-gauge bracing wire. So the bracing wire is what we use to do that wire that is going to kind of like triangulate our H-brace. So this is really important. Again, it comes in rolls. I think like the way I've bought it before usually comes in like a 50-pound roll, and it's a lot. It depends how much fencing you're going to use. I use it for trellising as well. It's good for trellising. We use it, you know, it can be used for a lot of different things. It's malleable. It's not like high tensile, so it's nice to work with. Tape measure, you don't need like a big tape for the fencing purposes of like laying out your, doing the things we'll do today. Oftentimes I don't even use a tape out there. Once you've been doing it a while, you can kind of just measure things by hand or with your body in certain ways, and I'll point that out. It's nice to have like a little apron for when you're out there. You don't need a big carpenter bag or anything, but it is nice to have an apron for when you're walking up and down your fence line to keep your staples, to keep your clips, a couple tools. And then I did bring, we're not going to hang a gate today because we don't have a gate to hang and we don't have the time to hang one, but I did want to bring a couple tools to just show you guys what I keep with me. I keep some sockets and a ratchet, because when you hang gates, it's usually like a 9/16 bolt that wraps around a gate, and then you have these kind of lag hinge bolts. Okay, so if you guys are familiar, probably a lot of you guys are familiar with having seen gates and how they hang, but it's kind of like a, you know, a piece of metal that straps around the gate. It's got an opening and it sits on this hinge, and yeah, so those are a couple extra tools that you'll want to have. And then this is our homemade tool that when you are installing these holes or these lag bolts, this can fit over there, and then you can ultimately screw it in with leverage. So this one's probably, this is seen a lot of gates installed. We brought that along today. So maybe we'll get to drilling the post, but I'm like reluctant to put too many holes in Daniel's 4x4s, but maybe we'll get to that. T-posts, again, not all T-posts are made equal. Don't buy these ones unless they're just for your, these ones are great for trellising. These ones are great for around the farm, for holding things down, for fencing. These will rust, as you can see. And when they start to rust like this, then they'll rust your clip, and then they'll rust your fence. So again, you want galvanized, non-painted, right? They're not going to be painted posts. The painting is not what you want. The paint's just going to come off. They need to be galvanized posts. So again, your commercial fence suppliers, that's what you're looking for. I'd recommend going, you don't need to go more than 6 feet. These are 6-foot posts. All your field fence is what we're referring to today, or hog wire, which is a graduated fence. It's almost like smaller at the bottom, bigger at the top, the pukas, and you'll see when we roll it out. Most of it is 47 to 48 inches in height. So if you're thinking about T-post, imagine you got your T-post, you sink it in about 14 inches or so. You're going to have enough at the top to catch your fence and catch your top strand of barbed wire. If you have cows, goats, horses, you have to have a top strand of barbed wire. They will ruin your fence, and don't wait on it. Don't be like, oh, I'll get to my barbed wire later. I need to put my horses in there. Yeah, they'll lean right over your fence. That top strand is really important. Again, it's not important for the pigs so much, but for, you know, just to kind of cover your bases, it's an important part of your fence. So with the T-posts, 6-footers and galvanized. And again, they have, with the galvanized, like on Big Island, we have, you can even choose between like the Chinese one, they bring in a Chinese one and an American-made one. And there's, again, a little bit of a different level there, so it depends how big your purse is on that one. And then I just make these homemade stretchers. I'll point this out today, but you can just take a 10-foot 2x4 by, just a 10-foot 2x4. I cut it down to 5 feet, drill a 1/2-inch hole at the top. I'll get to open this up. And we're gonna demo this. We'll demo this today when we stretch fence. They make, you can buy, I think, pretty expensive fence stretchers. They're like a clamp-based one. If you're a fence installer, then, well, you're probably not at this workshop. But if you have, if you want to become a fence installer, then you're probably going to go get like the clamp one because it's a little faster than doing this. However, I've installed a lot of fence, and this is all we use. It's real simple. But yeah, you just need a 1/2-inch bolt long enough to go through, and then we just have a couple washers on the inside so that when we open this up, we're going to put it over our fence, and then we just put a couple bolts in 2 different spots with some wing nuts and tighten that up, and then we'll be able to stretch the fence. Clamp, ultimately you're making a clamp for the fence. You can think of it as a clamp. Got some barbed wire on the bottom. I'll just talk about that for a quick second. So same thing, as I've been saying, not all barbed wire is made equally, right? So you can go to Home Depot, you could get this Class 1 field fence, or you can get Class 1 barbed wire. It's not going to last as long as your Class 3 stuff. So get your Class 3 stuff. Field fence is always going to be 330 feet. That's like your standard length, 330 feet. So this costs somewhere around 300 plus at Home Depot for Class 1. I looked at some prices on the Big Island before I came over here. 300-foot field fence, a Class 3. And also these ties, the way the wire is wrapped, there's different ways that fence companies do that. So there's ways that are called like Loctite, where the fence doesn't move, okay? So that's kind of all the commercial stuff that guys use. Field fence is running for a 4-foot piece, a Class 3 with the Loctite is between $375 and $420. So you're spending $75 to $100 more per roll, and your roll, that fence is probably gonna last, could be decades longer. Like, it's significant. This is actually Class 3 barbed wire because I just brought, I had to bring like a suitcase of stuff over from home. So there's 2 different gauges of barbed wire generally that we use. This is a 14 gauge, and then there's a 12.5 gauge. I only had this 14 gauge at home because all my 12.5 is used. The 12.5, if anyone doesn't know, as you go down in gauge, the thickness of wire goes up. So for hog wire or for fencing out pigs, I would recommend going with the 12.5 gauge, not the 14. We all know how strong the pigs are when they start digging down. So we for today's purposes, we're just installing the 14 gauge because what we had for the demo of this workshop. But I would recommend going with the 12 gauge when it comes to keeping the pigs out. For today's demonstration, it's really just try to get you guys the understanding of the tools and the concepts of how to like set up a fence. And along with what you're mentioning is common distances for spacing T-posts apart and H-braces and what we call line posts, okay? So your field fence usually comes 330 feet, so that's pretty much a good number of the distance between your corners, or what we would say your H-braces, where you're stretching, right? It's like almost that whole row of fence. And then every 100 feet or so, you want to put in what's called a line post. So like after 100 feet of T-post from a corner or a secured H-brace, you'll want to put in another wood post or metal post secured where you're fastening staples or or in metal, in the situation of metal, you'd be using a heavy duty clip. Okay, the distance between like an H brace to an H brace is the distance of your field fence, right? And then in between those in between that 300 feet, you have a T-post every 9 to 10 feet, and then at every 100 feet, you want to put in what we call a line post. Would be like a single wood post or a single metal post. Now, that's all considering it on gradual ground or relatively flat ground or sloping ground. When you start to get into undulating ground, you need multiple spots because you'll be pulling your fence in sections, right? You have to pull your fence in sections based on your straight lines. Okay, so does everyone understand what I'm saying in that regard, right? So if you have a flat section of land, yeah, it's flat, I can go 300 feet, but then, oh, now I got to dip for 40 feet. Now I got to stretch, I got to treat that slope as one section, and then it changes. Then I'm going to treat it as another section. So again, fencing is, I'll just lay it out to you guys, it is probably the hardest thing you do on your farm. So again, we have so much terrain and landscape here, it's real specific, and that's where the gamut of fencing gets, from expensive to ridiculous expensive, So I think looking at, like, for you folks, it's like, well, how big is your orchard? How much space do you need to fence pigs out? How much do you need to fence in for livestock, and evaluating those types of things. And one thing too, like getting into like real rocky terrain, sometimes you can dig smaller holes, if you can get through the rock, or if you're hammering or drilling, yeah, it's going to be a smaller hole. But yeah, when it's bony like that, and Pahoehoe in particular, which is, I come from that land over there. I mean, it's as rocky as it gets, and it's like granite. I've seen bulldozers, D9s, barely be able to get their ripper in this much. It's very hard. Generally speaking, let's say we're fencing the farm in, like that's the farm, this is the road, the pigs would be coming from here. So the fence would be on the outside of the road, on this side, I guess. And then the nipples of the T-posts would be on the outside, or like the fence would attach to the nipples this way, yeah. Imagine in your mind, this is a nice 5 to 6 inch diameter wood fence post treated with like creosote, or I think CCD or CCA is some different stuff. These these are just borate standard 4x4s. So my general rule of thumb is to shoot for about 24 inches. So we're pretty much at 24 inches here. If you're digging a fence post hole, what I like to do is not make it any bigger than I have to, but thinking about, like, when I put my post in, that I have enough room to get the tamping side of my bar all around it, okay? Or if I'm gonna put it on one side or the other. So in this scenario, we're imagining that that's our corner post and this is our corner post. Now when we're making an H, right? Does everyone know what an H brace is? You probably see them. So an H brace is, here, can I get this post that you're sitting on? An H brace, you grab that side. We'll just pretend that that's level. Does everyone know what letter that looks like? It's like an H. So an H brace is like your common, pulling point, okay? So oftentimes, like on ranches and fence, you'll see a corner will be an H on one, and then you'll have a corner, and then another H, right? And so what this H brace does is that we're gonna put a cross piece here, okay? The fence is stretching this way, and then we're gonna take our bracing wire, and we're gonna run the bracing wire from the top of this point where the this cross member comes to the bottom of this one, okay? So what that's gonna do is that really what we want when we stretch this fence, we want the pressure, we don't want so much all the pressure coming on this corner post. We want it to kind of spread through the H, and that's why we actually put the the wire, this 9-gauge wire, down from this top point on the H down to this corner, so that from this point on here, it's going to be getting pulled back, right, from this point. Okay. What we're going to do on the other side is kind of a shortcut ranchy type setup, where on that post, what you might commonly see when you're on low budget, or you're, you know, yeah, if you're like all of us on low budget and you don't have the time or energy to put in H braces, is we're going to take a metal post and we're going to drive it in and put it at an angle, okay? And then that's going to be our corner post on that side. It's not as strong, but it does work. So I do want to demo it to you guys today. So I'm going to show you guys both, because it's valuable to know how to do both. But before we if you are putting in H braces, then one thing that's important to do, I'm going to come over here and real quick, is in order to get, this is the other thing that makes it a little more work to put your H brace in, is that the part of your H brace that's in line of your fence needs to be in line with your fence, right? So we need to put a string up to know exactly where that's going to land when we set it, right? So what we did, like what Daniel and I did yesterday, we dug our 2 corners, right? We got our 2 corners in, and then I just put up the string to roughly know where this post is going to land, right? And then I take my string down, I dig my hole, and now when I'm ready to reset my post, I can put it right where I want, right? Now I got a line up, okay? You can actually, some guys will actually do this with barbed wire. So I'll show you that when we set our T-post, we don't even have to have a string up. We just put our bottom strand of barbed wire down, and that's our line. Saves us some time and energy. Now, if these were, these are actually 8-foot posts, because they're, you know, from Home Depot, and we just bought, you know, lumber, building material. The standard size you're going to get for your round post are all 7-footers. So these would be like a foot shorter. They're sitting a little proud, okay? But again, for the purposes of pulling them out and using them somewhere else, that's what we're using today. One quick note, I don't know how many of you guys have done much construction, but you don't need to tie like all kinds of knots with your string, okay? Some of you guys might know that, but just a little friction goes a long way, okay? Save you a lot of time and energy knotting things up. So now we have our hole dug. It doesn't matter so much the distance you're shooting for in between your when you make an H. It could be, I mean, sometimes you'll see like guys will make small ones, big ones. What I was told by my ranching friends was to shoot for about 6 feet, okay? That's the last thing I'm going to do is cut that. I'm going to get that set, and then we'll take a final measurement and install it. So, who wants to be the Oʻahu bar person, the tamper? All right. So with, Dan, you want to bring the shovel over here? So usually, like, you know, it's nice usually fence. Go ahead, put some soil in. So when I'm backfilling, okay, you can go ahead and start tamping. You're gonna do like 4 to 6 inches at a time, and then just tamp. And usually we're just getting it like, we're getting it close. And then this is where our torpedo level comes in handy. And I just want to remind you guys, you're not building a house. I've seen like, oh, you think that's gonna work? You just need to be within, you know, reasonable. Okay. So like, you know, everyone knows between the bubbles is level. Okay, go ahead, put some more soil in. And again, same thing, like what's more important, and it's a little, is that we're in line with our string. That's like really important, all right? But we're not like plumbing the stilt home, you know, we're just putting up fence. And okay, go ahead, keep going. And if you have this like clay-y type soil, like you can add some water as you're backfilling. You know, if you have a bunch of rock like we do, you just smash those rocks in there. And these posts, you know, we just set them yesterday, so they're not like super snug in there. If they had been let to set like a week or so, you know how this soil just kind of turns into cement? They'd kind of self-cement in there. And go ahead, you keep tamping. So I recommend, this is like my preferred OO bar that I recommend is the one with the tamper on the one side, not necessarily the OO bar that's got the point on the one side and the other. That being said, it's nice to have both if you can have both, but if you only have one OO bar, have the one with the tamper on the one side. It's nice to be able to tamp. Any questions on backfilling a hole? If we're using metal, we're only using cement. Okay? If we're putting in a metal post, we're using cement. If we're putting in wood, I mean, maybe some guys will tell you different, but I've seen it every day. Every kind of post I've ever put in the ground that's wood that we've put cement, it rots. Every single one.
Including Kiave?
Including Kiave, yeah. Kiave would be like the one I would say is probably if you're gonna put cement in, I'd say Kiave would be the only one. But again, all the big ranches up Waimea that we, you know, have like, I mean, hundreds of Kiaves, they're all just in tamped, you know. Yeah. Yeah, Kiave, if you can get Kiave wood, you know, for other than for emu, it's really good for fence. Okay. So now we have our H, and again, you know, these aren't like, you know, super like, you know, cemented in or like set up in the sense of like over tamping. Now you can take down your string. So would you mind?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so now now we have now we're gonna put our H in, right? So there's different, again, there's also, guys do this different. Some, you know, our fence, this fence in particular says it's, I think 47 inches. So, you know, 47 inches, the old handy nail. That's gonna be like our 47 inches. So 47 inches is here. This is the top of our fence, right? Which means our barbed wire, our top strand barbed wire for animals, you know, larger animals than pigs, is gonna usually be like about 3 inches above that. That's kind of a standard. You never wanna put this barbed wire too high, because then your issue is your horses or your cows, then they get their head between the barbed wire. It's more about keeping it close to that top so that they don't want to lean over on your fence. So I like to the way I like to do it is I like to kind of put my H or my cross piece right around the top of where that fence is going to be. That's kind of like where I was told how to, or shown how to do it. Some guys put it a little lower. You know, you don't really need to go up high, but right around that point. So I'm just going to take, you know, you can do it different ways, but you can be like, okay, 47, and then, you know, and I'm only using the tape because you guys are here. But if I was in the field, I probably wouldn't even be using a tape. I would just like, you know, I do a lot of, you know, you need to do it a long time. You just kind of use your body, you know, like we're the ultimate measuring tool. Like when you guys go, you know, when you plant your kalo, it's like haki lima, you know, like elbow to your, you know, all that kind of stuff. But, and then, oh yeah. And then I would take, I would, if I was with my helper, one of my boys, you know, we just lift it up, we'd make a mark on it of our H and then cut it with the chainsaw. I always like cut it like a little bit proud so that I can wedge it in there, right? So that it'll kind of hold itself. Again, we're not building a house. You can get real creative if you got a big post, you want to cut a notch out, all like that. It's kind of up to you, you know? It's like how much you want to spend, but really you don't, you know, a lot of the guys, you don't really do that. You just want to get it in there snug and then tack it in, because your bracing wire ultimately is really going to solidify everything, and then once your fence is in, it's going to solidify everything. So I'm at like, you know, 74 inches or so. So then I'll probably just like add an inch again with my handy nail. The next step actually is, oh yeah, there it is. Cool, thank you. Yeah, all right, so yeah. Nope. Okay. So then we're gonna install this, and this is where we might want to start. Like now we're probably getting into the place where like I'm gonna put our apron on and have a couple tools with us. Huh.
It's big, you know what I mean? They use them as gate posts.
Yeah.
By 10 years, he's down.
You hold that side, someone? You got that side? Right on. And then again, you can like get into your leveling. Get back to that. Ironwood will rot really fast. Don't use ironwood. Yeah, don't use ironwood. Okay. Okay, so again, we're just tacking this on, and like if we were gonna, you know, long term, I'd probably put 2 nails on each side, just at a 45, tack them in. So now we're gonna put our H brace in. So this is where we're gonna use our bracing wire. Now this is as I mentioned. Okay, we're kind of imagining that this could be, imagine this is going to be a corner, and we're going to like go all the way to those hills because we're going to put all the cattle in here. So our fence is being stretched this way, in this direction. So this is going to be our corner. So that means we're going to want our 45 with our bracing wire from this point to this point, so that when the fence wants to pull this way, this is being pulled back to the low spot, okay? It's stronger down here. So just imagine it's really tight in there, but getting, let's see. So again, this is where a couple people are handy. This was recovered GoFarm trellis bracing wire. So bring it all the way down here. What I like to do sometimes is I'll put especially when I'm by myself doing this, which can happen a lot. Here, bring that on that side. Is you can just put a staple in up here. And don't put it all the way in. It's just like a guide right now, yeah? It's just kind of holding your wire. And then same down here. And it looks pretty ugly, but you'll see that it'll work out. So Daniel, come grab this. Can I get someone on this side, just since we have an extra couple hands? Okay. And again, I'm not gonna make it super, I'm not like finishing my stapling off right now because I wanna take out some slack. The more slack I can take out now, the easier it's gonna be. Okay, then I'm gonna finish off my staple on this side. So now that's snug. I'm not really worried about that one right now. I can cut these ends off. And I'm gonna just wrap my little tails. And the bracing wire is pretty easy to wrap with by hand because it's so malleable. I'll pass this around. You guys can take a look at, that's 9-gauge bracing wire. If your hands are sore, it's the end of the day, this has different size pukas, so you can use this and put it over your wire and tighten and wrap it, okay? Like so. So now you have this here. You can take your hammer. Now you're gonna start tightening it.
That would have been the end of that hammer.
Yeah.
That really works.
Yeah.
You ever have the hammer come off?
You don't do that. Yeah. Okay, so any questions about the H-brace?
Yeah, if you tighten it too much, it's going to snap.
Yeah.
The right tension basically.
Yeah, and you'll feel like the whole thing will start to, I mean, right now, like, because of the way we tamp this hole and we're going to be pulling it out, you know, we're not like super solid this way, but this way, when we stretch that fence, this bugger's not moving anywhere. It's like, you know, it's like a, like when you build a wall, right? You got your header, you're in the ground, and then you got your brace, right? That's why they call it bracing wire. And you can also, if you don't do this with the hammer, you can also do it with your linemen's. Same. Okay, so now we have our H-brace in. Again, you guys are all imagining this is a 5 to 6 inch wood fence post treated here, and then this is like the 4-inch, just a little smaller size, okay? And then you cut it, you tacked it in, it's just kind of hanging out there, and then once you put this in, kind of all sealed up, okay? Now, as mentioned, we're gonna do the other side more, a little more rootsy. We're gonna save some money, right? Because let's imagine this H-brace, right? So we're like, 5 to 6 inch wood post is $50 probably in wood, so 50, 100, and then you got your 4-inch one. And the 4-inch ones often come in like 10-footers, so if they come in 10s, make this 5 feet, and then you get 2 per one, right? Rather than 6, right? And then so you're looking at like, all right, this H-brace cost me, you know, somewhere like 120 to 130 bucks. Plus I had to dig 2 holes. Plus I had to cut it and do that. Now we go to the other side here. Let's travel over here. Imagine we're walking down like hundreds of feet.
What do you call this style?
This style, I would call this one like maybe like a 45 corner, because ultimately we're just making like a 45 on this here. Okay, so the way I like to put these 45s in, oh, am I backwards? Yeah, like this. I kind of just, I found like one full step, about a yard, is about a good distance. Again, when you're fencing, I really encourage you to like use your steps as measurements as much as possible. It'll, over the course of multiple days and years, it'll save you like multiple hours than like pulling out a tape measure. And again, because it's 6 or 8 inches isn't gonna matter when it comes to this, okay? So, so I'm gonna put this post in, and I'm not gonna necessarily try to drive it in at its full angle. I'm gonna bend it once it's in there. There's someone who wants to put this in. I've done millions of these, I don't wanna do it. Right on, thanks bro. So just drive that in there. Grab one more thing. And then yeah, keep going. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we always say like go to the Batman shield is hidden. Perfect. That's good. Cool. Okay, so now now we're gonna bring it to the post. So usually what I do is I'm just gonna bend it. I usually go both sides. And then if you do it right, you keep these on the outside, and then this T, you'll be able to tack it on there. So if you guys come close, but you can tack it on, and then we're gonna put bracing wire here, but I don't want it to bounce back, so usually I'll just take one of my nails. Oh. So then it's stable, okay? And then we need that other roll of bracing wire. There was another bit of it. I'll show you guys one more thing. Yes, that one there. A lot of times on the ranches, you'll see that this isn't done with a T-post. They'll do it with like a wood post as well. But a lot of guys do it like this with the wood post or with the T-post as well. Again, it's nice with the T-post because again, you guys are imagining this is a galvanized. It's not a painted, right? It's this nice, made in America, galvanized Class 3 post that's gonna kind of outlive you. Okay, so now I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna come around here. I'm gonna secure it with my bracing wire. So usually I'll just like take a rough measurement and get my wire out of the way. There's different ways that I've done this, but I like to actually make one wrap. So same thing, I have it set there. I'm gonna take my staple. Made it a little tight on that side. You don't need the tail so long. So we can just cut this. No, I actually don't really use the wrap tool with these guys, but cut that one a little short. And then now same thing. Except this time I'll demo with the alignments.
So you just got like one or two wraps, and that's enough. tag end?
For what?
The tag end on the side?
Oh yeah, I cut this a little short. It's barely anything on there. Yeah, that's not really what's holding it at all. It's really the staple. Yeah, and then like sometimes after I get it set, I'll come in, hit that staple one more time. As we make little metal, you know, pieces when you're fencing, be real careful of these. It'll kill your animals. Yeah, yeah, a cow comes along and eats a staple, and so yeah, something to be mindful of when you're in the field. Any kind of fencing, you know, you drop something, or you know, just everything you cut. You know, again, it's another good reason to have an apron. You know, to just like your scraps, because you inevitably will have scraps and stuff you're cutting. So there you have your options of your strong corners, right? And then same thing, if this was a corner, we could just put another 45 like this and another unit, and then we have a corner, okay? If you were doing this in Schedule 40 galvanized steel, this would be a steel post. It'd be pipe, right? 2 7/8 is the standard corner size, and then you can do H braces with those, but they actually make a bracket where you can have a bracket here and a 45 with that Schedule 40, and that's a really nice way to do it. But again, it's a $85 post compared to, you know, it's twice the price on the post. However, it's twice the longevity. Yeah, and again, you're not using it. And then for installation, you'll learn, if you've done metal and wood, the staples are nice. It's like you're moving faster than like wrapping everything. We're gonna wrap this, like when we finish the fence, we'll staple it, but our wraps aren't what's holding the fence, it's the staples. Whereas when you're doing your metal, your wrap is everything, you know? And again, if you guys, you know, a lot of you guys over here is a little drier, so the wood posts will last, you know, a good bit of time. But when you start adding up like, oh, I need 100 posts, you know, if it's like 100 posts of wood and it's going to cost you $3,000, and 100 posts of metal is going to cost you $6,000, and then that's the cost of all your T-post and your fencing. Yeah, maybe you're like, oh, maybe the grandkids will be the ones to, you know, do that. That's what I always said to myself, but now I'm taking out my wood posts as they rot, so it didn't get that long. But again, it depends. Some of your wood posts can last longer. Like, you know, if you can find Kiave, you know, that's a good one, and find deals, and you got to evaluate those price points on it, though, you know. And then, you know, it is labor intensive to work with Kiave. I'll tell you, it's labor intensive. But it's pleasant. All your scraps is good for the emu. So at this point, anyone know the next step? Or thoughts on the next step?
Bottom wire.
Yes. So the next step is we're gonna run our bottom strand of barbed wire. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna run 2, and we're gonna use that bottom strand as our line for putting in our T-posts. Okay. So here's our barbed wire. And we'll run one way and one another. We always made a joke, like the Farm Olympics. We would say like the barbed wire hula hoop or something. But I never did it. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is where most guys wear gloves. I'm pretty bad about that, but yeah. So I'm going to show you the 2 different techniques of some stretching here. Right on, thank you. Whenever you're, yeah, it's good to wear gloves with barbed wire. Let's see, where's that end? I just had it, there it is. Now when you guys buy barbed wire, it's going to come in a roll. Not like this, unless you get it on Craigslist, then it might come like this. When your barbed wire comes in a roll, I don't know if you've ever seen the way the ranchers do it, especially if they're doing like multiple strands of barbed wire. You can put it on a rod. Yeah, go ahead and run with that. You can put it on a steel rod. You can make a little jig on your truck even, or on your tractor, and then you can like drive. You can attach it and then drive your tractor or your truck and unspool it. Obviously, you're not going to do that with the Craigslist version from the Big Island. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you're there on that side. All right, so whenever you're starting your line, you're gonna get one side attached, right? So, and remember, what gauge is this wire? 12.5. This is 14 gauge wire. What gauge would you want it to be? 12.5. Okay. So you're gonna come around your post. You're gonna make a wrap. So there's your wire. I'm gonna put in, so I don't like wearing gloves because it makes it hard to get in your apron. Now remember, like, don't make the mistake, like your fence is going on the outside, like, you know, don't come around like the wrong side of your post, or, you know, silly mistakes like that. Try to remember what you're doing. I'm gonna put this guy in. This is an example of how you would, if you were on like a metal post and you couldn't put a staple in. Again, you're gonna wrap your wire around the post, and then you're gonna wrap it around itself, okay? Since we have a wood post, we're gonna tack a staple in, but I'm not gonna sink it because it's probably gonna come out. Now, this is where we get to have some fun with our household hammer. I get a, so we're gonna stretch this one way. I'm gonna show you guys, and then we'll stretch the second one with the come along. So a good trick for, so one of the cool things about these H braces is that you can actually use one side of it as your pulley to stretch off of, and then you can tack one side. So someone can put a staple in here with that hammer. Usually when I'm using my hammer to stretch fence, I like to use the all steel hammer, but those all steel hammers, they tend to grow legs sometimes too. We're pretty much going to be on the ground, but what you're going to, here, hold up, don't put it in, just pull it out. So go ahead, you can grab it. You grab the back of the in a minute. You grab the barb with the back of the hammer. You use your lever. Go ahead. And that's one way. I always tease my boys when they put staples in like that. But so now
I can count as your boy for a second.
that's okay. No, it's hard to put them in, especially with a hammer like that. So I will say, it's really the hammer. It's not Daniel. But what it is, it's his hammer. But one of the things about the hammers is when you get a hammer for fencing, you really want to get a waffle head on it. It makes a difference because it's going to grab your staples more. Okay. So again, for doing barbed wire, like short, you know, relatively short distance or fence repair, the 2 hammers and 2 people is like ridiculous how much time it'll save, and it'll get you pretty tight. So that's actually not all the way. There you go. Cool. And then, and hand me that hammer. Okay. So so there you have your first line. You can wrap around. It's always hard working that low strand of barbed wire because you're really right on the earth, you know. Okay. So that's your low strand, and once you're it's also going to serve as how we're going to put our T-posts in, right? It's going to serve as our line. So that way, like, let's say you're running 100 feet, right, to your line post. 100 feet of string is a lot of string, and it's a lot of uncoiling your string and recoiling your string, and all of a sudden, like, you want to take a break, and you're like, yeah, I'm recoiling the string, you know, can take a while. And also, like, if you're using a string to put your posts in, it's an easy way to break your string. So, you know, I use that, like, when we did our string for the purpose of setting this post, we could have used the barbed wire as well, right? And the only thing is, the barbed wire would have been there when we put the post in. You could just take a stake or something and move it aside, and just move the barbed wire aside. You know what I mean? Okay. So now, because we're keeping out wild pigs, we want to roll, we're going to run 2 strands of barbed wire, right? So this one is really going to be like right on the ground, ultimately, right? And then our next one, I usually put a couple inches higher. So this one, we're going to run the other direction, and we're going to stretch it with the come along to show you guys that way. And we get to play with this again. Okay, here we go. We'll do better this time.
Is there a technique for doing that bottom strand the way you just did it but by yourself?
So setting this this next strand, we have a good example because there's 2 pieces here. I think I'm almost out of staples. We're just gonna go, same thing. I like to just, you can use your staple to set it. You come, coming about 2 inches higher or so. Maybe that's a little high. Okay. Now, we're gonna put our barbed wire short, or you ran out of wire and now you're putting in a new spool, right? How do I connect them? Barbed wire is actually a lot easier to connect than your connecting field fence. Just gonna let that go. Thank you. There we go. Okay. All right. So the barbed wire is pretty simple for making a splice. What I like to do is just make a simple bend in it. Doesn't need to be much. And then bring it around. Simple bend. Again, the nice thing about it being 14 gauge is that it's a little more easy to work with than the 12 gauge. So you do one side. Again, if you're just by yourself, then you do the others. If you're with a helper, one of your kids, you could do it together. Okay. So that's it. Okay. With the barbed wire on that low strand, keeping out pigs, I don't cut these or anything. It just seems like more deterrent to me. Okay, unless like I have a post right there and it's in my way, which we'll see in a minute. Okay, so now we get to our come along and some of our ropes. So with that double hammer method, you're never necessarily going to get it as tight as we're going to get it with the come along. Okay, but I did want to show that to you guys because it's a really fast and efficient method. So now you need something to pull off of, right? Because so a truck, a car, a tree, tractor, whatever you got. And then I don't know, you guys can practice your knots however you see fit. I recommend a bowline. You guys can watch YouTubes on how to make a bowline. Oh yeah, chain is great. Yep, chain works. Okay, so now, sadly, we just have a little bit of wire here, and so they have. I just want to make note. They have a actual barbed wire stretcher. Okay, there's a couple different ones. There's two different ones in particular. There's one that's I didn't bring it with me because I have it and I don't like it, but it has like a clamp on it, and it's got its own. It's like its own little come along. The other one that some of the ranchers have, they call it the dog, and it actually works with the come along, and it's got a little clamp on it and then a hook on it, and it clamps. It like pinches the barbed wire, and when you pull on it, it tightens itself. I don't have one, so what I do is I'm just gonna make a couple wraps. Around my come along. Okay, so that's the other way. If you have that tool, the barbed wire, the dog is the best one. It's a really awesome tool. It's like this. It's real tiny, but this way works. And I wanted to show you guys this way because it's less expensive, and you only need to buy one tool, the come along. So yeah, go ahead. You can go a little tighter. And again, this line, as you guys can see, it's not exactly where we want it, but we can move it, okay? So that's a common thing. You know, sometimes I like to try to get whatever tool I'm attaching to somewhat in the line. I like to have it a little bit on the outside of the fence because I can always push to the fence rather than if what I'm pulling against, like let's say what I was pulling on was like the ulu tree. Now I'm going to be like pulling these barbs are going to hit the post each time because they'll be too close. It's easier to push it in. We can go a little tighter. And there's like that fine line of like knowing that when you push it down, it's going to like tension too based on where it's at. So I like to come down and feel it. Like that's feeling pretty good. We can go a little tighter. One more. There we go. Okay, and then this is where you gotta take off your glove. Yeah, you're gonna get a feel of it.
Okay, not too bad.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make it like crazy piano string tight because yeah, we don't need to do that today. Yeah, and then when you're putting your I like to, whenever I'm putting a staple in on the barbed wire, I like to put it when you release, right, the wire's going to want to go one direction. So put your staple in on that direction where it's going to catch the barb. Okay, and then you can release the come along. And does everyone know, I'm not going to get into the logistics of how to use a come along because like we'll end up being here till tomorrow with all the things we're going to try to cover. But again, there's good YouTube videos. If you haven't used a come along before, they're simple tools. And like I said, it's one of those good ones that every farm could use. So then you have this little tail, same thing. You're going to bring that tail around. And I'm not going to get too, since again we're bringing it down, I'm not going to get too crazy with tying that all up. And again, you have a staple in there, it's around the post. You know, it's kind of up to you on what you want your fence to look like, and how far out you are on the back 40 of like how much you want to lace it all together. So now what do we do next? T-post, yes. And that's where another thing guys do, when we set our T-post, we're gonna have, you know, I like to really go like 9 feet. That's kind of like a sweet spot. I like to be more on that 8 to 9 feet rather than 10 to 11 feet. Because everything's gonna last longer and be tighter with that shorter distance. When you try to cheat it, and I know this from experience because I was a poor farmer for a long time, and I went, oh, we're going 12 feet, guys. We went 12 feet. I had to go back years later, put a post. Now it's 6 feet between. Solid, but it's a lot more money, right? So you really, that sweet spot now that I find is more like the 8 to 9 feet. Yeah, you're gonna spend more money on your T-posts, but you're gonna be able to deal with the gradient differences better, and the pigs aren't gonna pop up that fence. They're not going to have that ability the same way. Another thing that's commonly done in spaces, let's say between your T-posts is that 9 feet, and you have a weird move in the land. A lot of guys will cut T-posts, right? You cut a short one, and then in that weird low spot, you just put a short stake T-post in, and then bring your fence down to that. Yeah, maybe you guys have seen that. That's a really common thing, and it's a way you can buy. You know, they didn't even call them T-posts. The old timers, they call them rails, right? Because that's actually how they're made. They come in like, they're made at 24 feet long, and then they're cut, and then that little, I don't know, the Batman shield is put on them. But they're rails. That's how they're made. So you can cut the rails to your size. That's why they come different sizes. But you can take them, you know, and you can buy them and cut them with the grinder and have a stack of them, and then go around your perimeter fence. And everywhere you have some weird spot, you're like, oh, that might be a spot where that pig wants to get in. That's where you can take a hand sledge, pop that in there, and then clip to it, okay? And a lot of times, this is why I like to run the 2 strands on the bottom. Like this bottom strand, in this case, it's like we're a little bit off the ground. Sometimes I won't even clip this one. It's just, I'll just have it lay on the ground, and then I'll only clip the top one. And then that way, when it'll kind of, over time, it'll just get buried in the soil. So when the pigs do start to dig, they're gonna hit a wire, right? It's not actually above the ground at all. It'll just kind of come into the soil. But yeah, terrain's everything. And yeah, in something simple like this, if you have equipment, I just try to make it, you know, smooth as can. And then in the multitude of cases that you inevitably have, where you're gonna have, you know, variations in the landscape, cut, you know, out of each T-post. I mean, this is a 6-footer. A 6-footer is not the best example. If it was a 6-footer, I'd probably just cut it in half as 3s. But if you had a 7-foot T-post, you could get like 3 out of it. Cut them at like 2.5 feet, or whatever, 7 feet, what, 84 divided by 3. Do that math. And then you can get 3, and then you can have a, you know, have a little pile of those and go around while you're doing your fence, and just have some of those where you can clip it out. A lot of times what I recommend in some of those areas that are really undulating is that's where it's nice to have a couple of the 16-foot hog panels, right? So you take your hog panels and you can just set them there as solid. You know, they're still attached to T-posts, but you're not having to stretch fence over real technical terrain. That's what I've done on places on my farm where I've had some really difficult spots. I'll just take the hard hog panel, right? Cut them at the lengths I need, and then just set them in those weird angles and attach them. And then, because the pigs can't push those hog panels. I mean, I've seen them, like, they can run into them and stuff, but not like they can with even the wire, you know. So that's an option. I've seen that, and I've done that myself and have good luck with that. Does everyone know what I'm talking about when I say the hog panels? Yeah, so those are really handy to have around, not just for making, you know, nails out of. So now you're going to set your T-posts. You got your line in, kind of 2 birds with 1 stone. Put that staple in later, even though you don't have to. So this is where like I'm a big fan, like I just know what my distance is. I just usually go 1, 2, 3 and a little step. 1, 2, 3 and a little step. And then they're marked and you can like go forever. Just know your steps. So learn your steps. Take a tape, you know, lay it out, count your steps, and then you can know what you're getting at. So I'm guessing this is a little under, yeah, so that right there where I went is 9.5 feet. So for this purpose, we're only gonna put in 2 T-posts, but like again, if you're like, hey, I'm gonna put my T-posts in at 8 feet or 7 feet, you can just divide that distance kind of equally. But yeah, lay out a tape at home or when you're gonna do fence and just mark it out with a comfortable step, and then you can use that. So you're not like, okay, now we're gonna lay out the tape or you're gonna get out a wheel. You're just gonna be burning hours. You know, just use your body. When you're putting these in, you know, one thing is like you wanna get it, oftentimes when you're putting your post in, especially if you're around where I live, it won't go in straight because there's plenty rock, yeah. Just roll with that and straighten it after you put it in. If you keep trying to straighten it, you're just gonna keep loosening your hole, okay? This is pretty easy ground. It's gonna drive pretty easy. A lot of places on these lands, not gonna be that way, okay? So when the post starts to go wonky, just roll with it, okay? Just let it go wonky, and then once it's in, and the general rule of thumb, right to the top of the Batman shield, okay? I don't know why we call it the Batman shield, just what we do, yeah. But once you get to that point, then you can pull it how you want, okay? But what's important is that you set it at your line, okay? That's the important part. If you set it back here, you're never gonna get it right, okay? So set it at that barbed wire and then drive it in. Perfect. All right. So once you do this a lot, you start to, you know, Mr. Miyagi, like 2 strikes with the hammer to get the nail in. It starts to be a fun game. Like how many few hits you can do it. But yeah, and then on the rocky stuff, you almost have to go through the rock sometimes. You pound, you know, it's not going, and then you can like break a rock. So again, like I'm just gonna pull out the level to tell you, you really probably shouldn't use the level for this purpose, okay? But just like as you're learning, like what's level and what's not, yeah, you could bring the level out, but otherwise you're kind of just eyeballing it like the Christmas tree. If you put up a Christmas tree, you know, you're kind of just gonna go, all right, how's that look? Look at it from 2 directions. Okay, we're good. Again, you don't wanna be out here with every post going like this, you know. Honey, check this out. You know, it's not gonna work out. And so, yeah, the next one, again, when I'm going, and also just to note, you guys, make sure you put them the right way, you know. You make sure you put the nubs out like how you said you're gonna do them, right? Fence is out here, the fence is gonna be going here, the pigs are gonna push this way, okay? The livestock is gonna push this way. Okay, so make sure your nub's out. Got another volunteer? Okay. And so I just, when I walk them out, you guys see I just like lay them. I try to just lay them right where they're gonna go. Okay, always on the inside. And that's a good way, like when I'm working, you know, with helpers and stuff, they just know which way to put the nubs. Because again, you'll get way ahead of someone when you're putting them in. Imagine we can go 100 feet like this, right? We're gonna go 100 feet at you know, put those T-posts in every 8 to 10 feet, depending upon your terrain, your budget. Don't go over 10. And then every 100 feet, put in a wood post or a metal steel post as a line post. Every 300 feet, you're putting in an H or a, you know, a bracketed 45, you know, kind of, you know, ranchy H. Okay, what's next? Now we got our field fence. So, I usually don't clip this until I put my field fence up, because sometimes I can get one clip to attach my field fence and my barbed wire. And again, over the course of a long day, it'll save you some time and energy when you're, because when you start clipping, you're on your knees and up and down and all that. So in this scenario, if you guys want to come closer down here, but we're going to work down here for a little bit, getting this wire out. Field fence usually comes in, it's always got a little clip here, or it's like wrapped around. Again, this is you can kind of tell, see how bright this wire is? That's a sign that it's really just barely galvanized. It's just zinc, So like you guys know, when you put in something zinc outside, or a zinc hinge or something, what happens? The bugger doesn't last. Okay. So you're gonna get this, when you get that class 3 nice wire, it's gonna have a much more dull look to it. That dull look is that, it's been hot dipped more. So yeah, usually gonna use your linemen's, open these up. Sometimes with different fencing companies, they might have an actual like clip you gotta pinch off or something. And so if anyone knows what not to get, is the class 1. It's right here. Okay. What? Yeah. This is the Home Depot stuff. But you do want the 12.5 gauge kind of stuff, which is, they do make, there's like a 14 gauge field fence. Don't buy it. Now what I'm looking at is, I'm gonna unroll this fence, but it's kind of, so we want to, usually like what I'll do is, I want to get it a little bit closer. So if I have a helper, we can grab that side, because this stuff's kind of heavy. We're just going to go like a few feet. That's good. And then I often use the Oʻahu bar. Thank you. Sometimes the Oʻahu bar is not quite enough if you have like, sometimes, yeah, if you have a helper with a foot, and then there might be, as you're unrolling, there might be some different wires wanting to stick this in, like that one and that one. You're gonna find them quick. Okay, so does everyone see how this is graduated wire? Okay, this is really important that you buy the graduated wire. This wire is still gonna let baby piglets in. That being said, they're not such a problem unless they start breeding inside your fence, and then that's a problem. So we're gonna take that down there, and then we pretty much don't need to worry about that. That's nice and heavy. They do make, again, there's, they call these the horizontal stays. These are your horizontal stays, right? This is the horizontal part. So I think this one's got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Is that right? 2, 4, 6, 10. So there's 10. They do make different styles that you can purchase. They have like 12, which means that there's going to be 2 extra wires in there, which means that this space will be a little smaller. Okay. Same with the so, if you're like, I don't want piglets in there, you're going to have to spend more money, and maybe you're going to have to special order some field fence if they don't have it in stock in one of the commercial places. But then these are going to be a little smaller. I think they make I think Miranda's on Big Island, oftentimes they'll have in stock like a 14 horizontal wire one, which keeps out 90% of the piglets. Like they really, just the tiny ones can get through. And if they get through, sometimes they'll even have difficulty getting out. So they're just kind of like, they're gonna pass away pretty quick. And they're not such a big issue. And also, like I was saying, this wrap style like this is kind of like not the best style anymore. There's actually a style that It's like a tight lock, and it doesn't, these stays actually slide. And you'll see when we stretch the fence, if we stretch it tight enough, some of those stays will kind of slide across these horizontal, the vertical stays will slide. And they make a tight lock style, which doesn't do that. And that'll come with the other, that class 3 better wire. So now you got that down there. Oh, and now we're gonna get your fence up. So you're gonna take this off. So now you're gonna bring your fence up. No, there's no inside or outside, correct. So there's a bottom and a top though, that's for sure. There's a bottom and a top. So what I'm gonna point out, you guys, over here when we start, what I like to do is make sure before you put your staple in, your first staple, it kind of determines like where it's gonna be. So what I like to do is try to find a line, you know, that I'm gonna follow and keep it even. I'm gonna give myself plenty of room here, especially in this case with you guys, to wrap this, and I'll show you that in a minute. If you were doing metal posts, right, if this was metal, obviously we couldn't put staples, so we'd have to cut out a whole section of these verticals, so we just had lines, and then we'd be wrapping every one. And that's what I'm kind of going to point out now, is that with the wood posts, using staples is like way faster, like, and way easier. Doing every one of these is like, you'll do it, you know, just as like to clean it up when we're done with the wood staples, but to do it to pull, it's like time consuming. So I find like my vertical stay and I get my height right. So I really want this fence, I like to have it like on the ground. You know, you really just want it on the ground, which is where your bottom wire is. So in this case, I'm going to start at the top, and also the fence is going to be pulling that way. So I want my staple on the pulling side of my wrapped vertical stay. Okay, so I want it there. So now I got my top one set. Now usually I'm going to come down and see how I put that top one right here in the middle. Now I have a line to follow. If I start doing weird stuff like this, the fence, when I pull it, it's gonna kink and skew at a certain spot because I didn't make it straight. Okay, and it's already, you can see where, like in the manufacturing, we have this little bit of a weird spot here, but we can almost straighten that out. You see that, where it's flexible? So I can follow my line down of those stays. All right? So then I'll maybe do, sometimes when I wanted to get it to stay, I'll put my staple in around both sides so it doesn't want to pull back. Okay? And don't be shy to sink those staples. Even though we're going to be pulling them back out. But that's where that clap claw is like super handy. Takes them right out. So there you have those. And then I do every one. In this situation, I'm not going to probably do every one, but you got to make sure you do the bottom. One thing to note is that all this field fence, the bottom wire is going to be 10 gauge. Top wire is going to be 10 gauge. These middle wires are the 12 gauge. I think that's right. Yeah. Some of these newer fences, and again, depending upon what's brought in, sometimes all of them will be just 12 gauge. You won't have a bigger wire on the top and the bottom. So. And then once you got your line set, you know, then you're kind of just pounding them in. So now let's go to the other side. And yeah, so this is all set. You know, we put actually I might as well put the, just kind of try to skimp. We just got 2 more. You will see it if you don't actually put staples at every one. What'll happen is when you stretch it, that one will, you know, it'll pull a little bit, you know. So I was trying to save these guys a little bit with the claw, but okay. So now we're gonna go down. We got our stretcher. So now what we got to do is got to lift up the fence and we got to bring it over. So yeah, you can just grab that corner and we'll lift together. Ready? And we're gonna kind of lift and pull the bottom this way, same time. There we go. Just drop it. Yeah. And then what we want to do, I usually drag it out of my way this way. So we're gonna kind of bring it like this. That's good. I actually did this wrong. I want to bring this back out. There we go. So like in this scenario, like I'm looking at this fence, what we can do is, there's different ways to do this. Like if we were like making a turn here, we could stretch this, staple this, and then we could just keep unrolling. If this was the end of our line, what I'll do so I don't have to like work around this while I'm stretching is I'm just gonna cut the fence here so I have enough to pull around. So I'm gonna do that right now just so I'm not working around this big roll since we're pushing such a such a short fence. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of like eyeball taking it around this post, and it's not much. Again, we're taking it out. Generally when I cut fence, I always cut it right in the middle so I have a tail to work with always on both sides. Okay, don't cut it right against your stay, just cut it right in the middle. And this is where those guys come in handy, where it's just really, yeah, you can hold that. It's just really nice to use these guys. Yep, and then when you're done with your roll, you can take that little tail that you made and you can tie it in just in a couple spots. Usually do one at the bottom, one at the middle. And yeah, just avoid that top one because it's the hardest one to work with.
Sticker, that's why.
Yeah, it's thicker. And then your fence is ready to put away, or like you're gonna roll it somewhere else. So in this case, we'll just lay it down. All right, now for the homemade contrivances. So I use, you wanna get right in the middle of your stay, you wanna be right in the middle, that's important. You also want to make sure you're right on the bottom. I like to leave about, you know, about a ½ inch from the bottom wire to my to the bottom of my 2x4. I'm gonna put that in, and all it is a little ½ inch bolt, about 4 inches long. I like to use a wing, no washer. I like to just use a wing nut on there. And I usually don't over tighten it yet. Make sure you get the top one in, and now you can snug it up. And you want them to be like, you know, snug. Like good hand tight. Like it's pinching, it's gonna pinch that. So there's your homemade contrivance fencing clamp. And now we'll get back to, let me get this other rope. You want to make sure you go right, or you don't want to go around the wire here. You want to go right around the clamp. Okay. And then back to that your bowline. All right. Now let's see here. It's kind of short. You only want to do the fun part? Come along. Sometimes when you're doing this, like if you get don't want to use the come along, you can just reverse your truck or tractor. Just don't go too far. So that's about it. And then I like to, take a feel of it, see how tight. I like to, sometimes like you'll come around the fence and you might see some, if you're like me and you're using old fence, sometimes you gotta like take out a kink or open something up. It's always pleasant working with new fence. And then just kind of keep feeling it for what kind of tension you want. And if it feels good, make it tighter. And I like to look at you're gonna know the quality of your H-brace or whatever you're pulling on, coming back over here and taking a look at it. Like, how's it, now you got all this force coming on here, right? And in this scenario, it's not pushing at all on this yet, not until we staple. So everything's getting pushed on here. And I'll take a look at it, and it's got a lot of pressure on it, and it's not moving. So again, this example of we did this fast, this doesn't matter so much. It's going this way. Now, if we were waiting on it and putting water in, like I was saying, we'd want it all solid, but for the purposes of our 3-hour demo, we're good. So it feels pretty good. So we're gonna make it tighter. Yeah, when you start to hear that. And then I'm always scared to walk over that. So I usually go around. I mean, I'm done having kids, but I'm not gonna walk over that. So then you're, now you can attach it. So with your attaching, just gonna lean on it. Now same thing with your staple, you're gonna go back. The fence is gonna be, it's gonna wanna push back this way. So now I'm putting my staple on this side. Any questions? You guys are gonna be fencing before you know it. I like to, I always like to clip before I actually take my come along off, just so that it's I'm fully secured, You can, in theory, take that come along off now and everything's legit, but you actually, I'm sorry, no you don't, because you definitely want to attach this guy, right? Because ultimately, you want a lot of the pressure on this post and relieved from this one. So I'm just gonna put a couple staples in this guy because we're pretty good. And this is like another example, like see where my barbed wire is? I can put a staple in over that barbed wire. Again, same thing, I have a double staple there.
That's more of a grandma hammer right there. It's a real old one.
All right, guys, so now we got our clips. So clip tricks. There's three different little tools you can use for your clips. The one is out of your hog wire or your hog panel. You can cut a little clip piece. Your other is your 16D nail. And sometimes I like to use a Tico for my lower wires because I don't have much room. Okay, so I'll show you guys here how we clip. Gonna get right down there. It's nice usually to start on the bottom because that's gonna set everything. You know, if you start on the top, you're like, oh, it's so nice to be standing up, and then you just start doing that, and then all of a sudden you look down and you're 3 inches off the soil. So come on down here. In this case, I'm gonna what I like to do is I like to get this secondary barbed wire. It's gonna be in the middle of that stay, okay, of the two horizontal stays. So I'm gonna go down. A lot of times at home, I don't even like clipping this bottom wire anymore because eventually the soil kind of grows in there, and it's a real hassle to clip it. But for you guys, when we're talking pig fencing, we're gonna clip it. So I'm gonna put this barbed wire. Again, it's kind of your call if you want that barbed wire to be clipped or not. I take my little Tico. I like to, you get that clip on there set, and then you can take your linemen's, and you can tighten it. And then sometimes once you get it around, I like to put that bottom one on there real good. Okay, and then you got your second barb. These clips there's a real way to use them and a way not to. Okay, so I'll pass a couple around. I'll just pass that around. So you guys can see there's like an open end. Okay, the open end is what you're gonna wanna put on first, and then you're gonna wrap it around the T-post like so. And then that's where you're gonna come in with your tool. I'm gonna do the top, and you're gonna bring it around, okay? It's kind of a preference. The nail's nice because you can drop it in, it doesn't fall out. But again, the nail can get a little cumbersome in its own sense. Once you have it on like that, it's really, what I like to do is do them all, and then I take my lineman's, I like to pinch that open side, because I have seen that open side snap off, especially when a horse comes right here and puts its butt and it starts going like this when it wants to scratch. I hate it. And loosens your fence. So now we're down here. We're gonna do this second strand of barbed wire, and this is an important one because you're kind of getting another horizontal stay here. Okay, and this is part of the reason why you don't want to do it before you put up your fence or before you put up your hog wire, because you want to see it perfectly. Okay, I'm gonna take my nail. It's only gonna go around so much. Take my lineman's, pinch, pinch. I keep goats, cows, and horses. I usually put a top clip, skip the second one, and I put a clip. And then I usually will skip, again, it depends on your livestock in particular. Then I usually skip one, put one, skip one, put one. And then in my situation, like where I've kind of dealt with a lot of our pigs and, you know, I don't really have pig issues anymore, I'm good. That's it. That's all I'll clip. If I have at our Ally site at GoFarm, where we have a lot of pig issues, then I'll put another, I'll definitely do some extra clipping down here. So I'll clip this guy. And then if I'm really feeling like a frisky situation or like crazy pig pressure, I'll put a clip on this one as well, you know? So like you're real, and again, like Uncle here's been saying, like, you know, those pigs are smart. Those pigs are a nuisance. You spend all this time, effort, and money. If it's really all about pigs, clip every one of them down there. Don't skimp on it. There's no reason not to put in a 10-cent clip. And actually, of all the things you do with the fencing, it's kind of pleasant to put the clips on. It's a real rewarding time. It's like, oh, I'm putting my clips on, like, and make sure to come back with your linemen and pinch them, okay? Because they will pop. It will happen. They'll pop. So just give them that little pinch. And if you want to tighten them more, if you feel like, oh, I want to make it tighter, just pull that around more. If you want to make it tighter, once you get it around, pull it more. You know, now that bugger's really on there. So same down here. Again, what's nice about that hog wire or the hog panel one is it's nice and thick. So I can really, you know, really pull on it. The nail is like, it's a little wimpier, but so now so that's your clip off, and then let's just imagine, okay, we're gonna do the same, we're doing the same thing on that T-post, but in between this 9.5 feet, let's say, oh look, let's imagine this divot is a little worse. This is where we have that opportunity. You're like, oh man, it's like, a pig will start getting its nose in there or something. Now you take your little 3-foot stays, pound that bugger in there, and then you take your foot and clip all that down. You can do that in a number of spots with those cut off pieces. You know, I mean, I've seen guys have a piece between every single one of these, you know. And again, it's a lot of effort and time, but you're gonna keep your pigs out, okay? So the next step, we'd be clipping this the rest of the way. And then we come over here, and then imagine we clip that, and then we're gonna take our come along off. You can keep your top bowline on because you're going to be stretching fence all day. You can open up your bottom loop. And then I come back once I have everything clipped. So we're just imagining that's clipped, but you can see it's good. Then you take off your fancy homemade clamp. So I believe those metal clamps that they sell at the fencing stores, I believe they're like almost $150 now. So this costs a 10-foot 2x4. I don't know, what's that run these days, 12 bucks or something? Yeah, and then a couple Ace Hardware bolts, you know, it's like, you know, 15 bucks and a couple holes. And it'll last forever too. You could paint it if you want. So then this next little part here, you know, now imagine you're just going to clean this up and bring this around, right? And there's different ways to do that. Like, you know, if you wanted to cut these verticals, if you wanted to cut this off, I like to leave a little bit of length in case I ever need to come back, especially like I need to replace a wood post or something, you know, you whack it with your tractor, you damage something, I don't know, the termites eat it. Then you can come back, you can pop your staples, you can put a post in the same spot, and now you have something to pull from. You don't have to splice a new piece of fence in. Okay, so then I'll just bring this over. See, will you get me one of those fancy turners on the left-hand side? That's got the 3 holes in it. Yeah, that saves you a lot of time. You can come in. Okay. Again, you don't need to like go crazy. Like a couple turns, it's okay. Like again, you're setting it up like this in case you have to come back later. And every turn you make, you're adding a potential like rust and weak point to it. You know, those turns are adding, like on the long haul in 15 years, this is what's going to rust before this does. Those turns, it's like water's going to sit there, moisture's going to sit there. It's the little things that you see over the long period of time. So yeah, you do that all the way down. You know, here, I'm not going to do it, but you would just kind of cut these stays out so you could go around that or not. You know, you could just come right over this, right? You can just come right over it like that and leave it. And again, you don't need to attach that. It's okay. It's fine. And you just go all the way down. Make it safe for yourself or your kids, you know, your cows, you know, you get them all connected. Now I want to show you guys a trick, a common thing. I'll show it to you over here, but let's say you have a fence for a long time and say a tree falls on it. And you're like, because you decided to put it right on your border and you didn't want to maintain that other side, like I was saying, or a tree just falls on it because you have a tree there. A common way to tighten a fence, like maybe you don't have time or you got to do a quick fence repair, you go out there with your linemans. You can make a twist, work your way down, and you're kind of shortening the fence. This is something that I like to do. Even sometimes the fence doesn't stretch perfectly even top to bottom. Like it's like this fence right now, I can feel it's a little snugger on the bottom than the top. So you can kind of work that top around and you can kind of feel it like, okay, it's getting tighter and tighter. So I just wanted to point that out. It's a way you can, you know, fix and repair fence really quickly, or if it's like a temporary repair. Or again, I've left fence like that a long time, you know, kind of get it back up. Your next step would be your top strand of barbed wire. Now, if you're only doing pigs, you know, and you're like, hey, I don't have any livestock in there for now, I don't need to do a top strand. You don't need to do a top strand. You can always come back later and do a top strand. If you're going to do your top strand, you're going to do it just like you did the bottom strand, right? You can either do the 2-hammer, 2-person way, or you could do pull it. Oftentimes with the pulling that top strand, it's nice to have, you know, something with some height to pull off of, right? If you're pulling with a come along, or that's where it comes in handy with the 2 hammers, right? Because you can just pull at that top point. And then, like I said, don't try to get, like, if you're trying to keep livestock in, don't think, oh, I'm just gonna make my fence taller and put my barbed wire up here. As you do that, the horse and the cow, they're gonna stick their head right through it. They're gonna scratch the back of their neck while they eat over here and push your fence down. So don't do that. Keep it about, you know, shoot for about like 2.5 to 3 inches maximum, okay? Don't last, like trying to use some eucalyptus, and I put eucalyptus in the ground and it lasted a year. So it's like, it's a lot of work to put something in the ground and then, you know, to take all this apart and then put it, you know, dig it out and dig it all. So I'd say that's one. The other one, like I mentioned, is putting your T-posts too far apart. Trying to skimp on your T-posts. Like, make them shorter. Spend the money and go 8 feet rather than 11 feet, you know. Oh, I'm going to say, what's that? Do it right. Yeah.